the next record will have a lot of elements of the theatre in it.
This is the Passion Play album, is it?
Yeah, but I mean, that's something that I'm just writing now. And we won't start recording that for a couple of months yet. But that will involve a lot more than just music.
Concerts West presents in concert Jethro Tull.
Jethro Tull, live at the Tarrant County Convention Center.
Tickets for Jethro Tull are waiting for you. Preston Tickets in Dallas and Central Tickets in Fort Worth.
So there was an opening piece of film in the middle, and then a little bit at the end. The whole thing, I thought, made quite a nice stage presentation. It was rather elaborate and rather difficult to do because this movie screen had to be sort of lowered from above the stage, at the critical moment. The film had to go on, the music had to start. I mean, it was really, to take this on the road every night, was a real big number, It was part of what was happening when the audience walked into the hall, took their seats, talked to their mates, was what appeared to be a still on the screen came up, and a subsonic pulse began. You couldn't even hear it, it was so low. And it gradually went up in pitch, so it became noticeable at a low level and gradually built up as the figure started to move. And I got a great deal of kick. I watched that every night. I used to watch to see if I could spot the first person in the audience who said, "Here, she's moving."
Okay, we're going to talk with Rusty right now. Welcome to Rockline, Rusty.
Yeah, hi, Bob. Hi, Ian.
Hi.
Do you have any video footage of either the Passion Play or Thick as a Brick tours?
Not really, no. They didn't do that stuff back then, and if there were any pirate videos, they would have been, I can't imagine what they would have been, they must have been doing a quick lightning sketch. I don't think such things had, little camcorders didn't exist, and as far as I'm aware, none of the shows were ever filmed or even recorded. So there is nothing at all to celebrate those albums in terms of any form of recording. Sad to say.
We opened the Passion Play thing with a little bit of movie, which I shot with a high-speed camera. The belly dancer sort of being dead in the position of the album cover and sort of slowly getting up, and she jumped through a mirror, and ran away through the other side, as I remember, and into the music.
the opening of a passion play from Jethro Tull in 1973. Well, not for the first time, the views of the critics did not coincide with the verdict of the public. A passion play achieved gold album status, like all the 6 Jethro Tull albums which had preceded it. Jethro Tull are obviously among the leading half a dozen live attractions in the world.
We had a big problem with After Thick as a Brick because we started work on a double album of a non-conceptual nature, as different as we could make it from Thick as a Brick. A double album of just sort of lots of nice songs, which we went to Paris to record, a place called the Chateau d'Auville, where Elton John had recorded one of his albums, I think. And we went over there to work, and we found it very difficult to work there. Technically, it was sort of not what we were used to. I mean, it was very, very primitive. You know, we abandoned it all, came back to Britain, and rather than start recording the same material all over again, which is very difficult, we thought better just forget it all and start again, write more music and do something else. And Passion Play was, written quite quickly, although it involved an awful lot of hard work and an intense cloistering of the group, working away down there until we got it and we could play it. It was still done relatively quickly.
I think you can detect from the last song how the band was beginning to develop in terms of contrast within the arrangements, shifts of tempo, tone coloration from individual instruments and collective string accompaniments, that kind of device. And too, even in those early days, Ian Anderson emerged as a hugely strong personality. He perfected a tattered, maniacal on-stage image, which accentuated the specialness and originality of the band.
In the elaborate stage performance, the music was accompanied by film and other effects, and one critic said of the show that it created a new universe, a new world of being, a new mental high. Unfortunately, few other journalists agreed with him.
Originally, Ian intended to develop a passion play into a full-length feature film and actually wrote a script and discussed it with actors and directors. But mainly through reasons of finance, this eventually fell through. In the meantime, the group once again took their new music on the road, and despite sellout shows, both here and in America, the harshly critical reviews finally got to the group, and they decided to discontinue live performances, ironically at a time that a passion play was at the top of the American album charts. As the Melody Maker headline put it, Jethro retire hurt.
The group's reaction to this barrage of press hostility was to cancel all touring plans for 1974. And then the real bombshell. Chrysalis Records announced the retirement of Jethro Tull for an indefinite period.
It got a couple of very noticeable, really bad reviews, which had that spin-off effect. Everybody then suddenly thought that it was a big failure. Anyone who's enjoyed a degree of success, it's great to knock them off their perch and see them eat humble pie, tumble back down to earth with a bang. And, we all deserve that. It's good for us, isn't it? I mean, it's good for the soul to be taken down a peg. And that happened for a while, but we have an album there at the end of it which so many people now seem to like, and we're always getting requests for playing Passion Play live on stage. And, it's nice to know that people enjoy it.
Some of the kinder comments made about the album described it as half-baked posturing and arrant nonsense. But despite such criticisms, Passion Play did reach #1 in America, although it failed to join the group's previous 4 albums in achieving platinum status. It was less successful in Britain too, and looking back, Ian has few illusions about its popularity.
It was only #1 in the States for 1 week, which meant a lot of people went out and bought it on the assumption that Jethro Tull's last album had been #1 for several weeks and was a good album and they'd all loved it. And this next album must also be a great album and they would love it, and they all rushed out and bought it. Not exactly mad about the fact that it was unfortunately the same sort of way of making music, uninterrupted by separate tracks and blank spaces in between, and that it was musically quite complex and difficult to play on stage. We would rather have not had another album out like that just then, but that was how we had to do it because of the failure of the thing we tried to do in France. We were not prepared for the level of harsh criticism that we got, but nor could we sort of really honestly say it was unjustified, because we felt a little bit bad that it was sort of to us a bit too much like Thick as a Brick.
Martin. Martin, you like passion play. Oh, you say you do. Perhaps you're just trying to make me feel better.
It was sort of very traumatic to play, wasn't it? We played at one point the whole of the album live in one go, and it was so mind-boggling. It was, I don't know.
Well, it kept you awake.
It
kept you awake.
That, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't keep me awake.
Strange when I started smoking.
When it came to staging the show, a great deal of care was taken over presentation.
On the record, there was a piece of totally synthesized, programmed synthesizer music, which sort of faded out one side and brought in the second side. And when it came to doing that live on stage, it was a bit soft, just having a sort of 2-minute gap of totally electronic music, which we can't play on stage, so we might use a pre-recorded tape or something, but we stand there like dummies while it plays. That's not very good. If we mime to it, that's cheating. And if we try and play it live, it'll be a disaster because it's impossible to play live. And yet we can't just leave it out because then we wouldn't be playing the whole thing on stage, which we very much wanted to do. So we came up with the idea of putting something in as a visual thing in accompaniment to that synthesized piece of music, which would, be a sort of interesting little break in the middle of the show. And we decided to put it on film, which meant we could all go off stage for a, glass of beer and a cigarette whilst this thing showed. So what we did was to make a film. We wrote a little thing around Jeffrey's story of the Hare Who Lost His Spectacles and the synthesizer music that was front and back of the story of the Hare Who Lost His Spectacles, and filmed that at enormous expense. I mean, even back then it was a lot of money. I mean, a day's shooting with a 3-camera crew, 35mm, the real thing, catering trucks and unions and 6 o'clock calls and, mobile dressing rooms and everything. I mean, it was about £12,000 it cost for a 1-day shoot.
Jethro, new, innovative, folk rock, different, innovative.
music or pop music should always be simple and about the same topics. I disagree. I think our audience is more intelligent than that, and they deserve something more varied and more interesting.
I wanted people to listen to it and form their own conclusions about what I was saying or what I might be saying. And it's ironic that the countries in which that album was most accepted are non-English speaking countries. And they like it, not because they don't know what it was about, but because they've had to take that much more trouble to sort of decipher the English, to actually translate it. And having made that bit more effort, they seem to have, got more out of it, whereas a lot of English-speaking countries, I mean, particularly, I'm thinking of America, they tended to just sort of think, well, this is much too difficult for us. It's in the English language, but we just don't really understand it, man,
Passion Play was it was a very fulfilling album at the time we made it, but looking back on it now, it was short on one thing, which was a kind of warmth and a humour that I think was there with Thick as a Brick. That element, I think, was missing on Passion Play, looking back on it. So yeah, it's an okay album. I stand by most of it, but it's just a bit short on that extra ingredient.
Yeah.